This is what people buy when they want to lose belly fat. But if you want to lose pounds from your waist and not your wallet, today I'm revealing 7 ordinary foods that can make visceral belly fat easier to lose. And this is not because any of these foods magically burn belly fat, if only it was that easy. But the right food choices can support weight loss, reduce inflammation, improve gut health, and support insulin sensitivity, which will all help on your mission to shift that belly fat. And as a dietitian, I am practical. These foods also need to be affordable, accessible, and they need to taste good, because it's not what you eat once that matters. It's what you eat again and again, so you're going to want to like it. And this is about far more than changing what your stomach looks like. Because visceral fat, it does not just make your belly look rounder, it also cranks out inflammatory proteins that can increase the risk of heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver disease, and some cancers. So let's start with food number 7. This is a food that many people avoid when they're trying to lose weight: nuts. And I understand why, because they're high in calories. But interestingly, when we look at the research, regularly eating nuts does not appear to cause weight gain. It may even be associated with less weight gain over time. And there are a few possible reasons for this. Nuts contain fat, fiber, and protein, which makes them satisfying. So although they add calories, people may naturally compensate by eating less elsewhere. Also, your body may not absorb every calorie listed on the packet either. For example, a 28-gram serving of walnuts may be listed on the packet as containing 185 calories. But we know your body doesn't absorb all of that. It typically absorbs around 20% less, so you're looking at around 140 calories. And this is because some of the fat, it remains trapped inside that fibrous structure of the nut, and therefore it passes through your digestive system. So essentially you poo out some of those calories. Now this still does not mean that nuts are calorie free. Of course, portion size still matters. I would aim for a small handful, or roughly around 30 grams. And I will typically get my weight loss clients to avoid eating nuts out of like a family style bag. Portioning them out first can be a good habit. But from a practical point of view, nuts are one of the easiest snacks that you can have available. They are a whole food. They require no preparation. You can have them in your handbag, in the car, in the desk at your office, and they don't need to be kept in the fridge. And walnuts are particularly worth mentioning because these are commonly included in the Mediterranean style eating pattern, which has very good evidence for reducing visceral fat as part of the overall dietary pattern. Now next we have a food group that is notoriously demonized when it comes to weight and belly fat in particular, and that is carbohydrates. And I particularly wanted to include this point because I want to mention a topic about sourdough bread, which has been coming up in conversation a lot with some of my weight loss clients. But as a whole, a lot of people attempt to cut out carbohydrates when they're trying to lose belly fat. They try to go on a ketogenic diet because a lot of the advice that you find online will suggest that. But this is not necessary. And not only is it not necessary, it's also quite impractical for many people. And again, it all comes down to what you're actually able to do long term to get results. So practicality should be very high up the priority list. But you do need to think about the type of carbohydrates that you consume and the amount. That is important. You want to have less of those refined white carbs, like your plain white breads and your white pasta. And instead, you want to be prioritizing your whole grains where you get some fiber. Think of oats, barley, quinoa, brown rice, whole grain bread. All of these can fit into a diet that is designed to support visceral fat loss. And I want to talk about bread specifically because I've been asked a lot about clients when it comes to sourdough. Many people love to go to their local bakery and get a sourdough on a Saturday morning. But I want to clarify, because sourdough has a health halo, but sourdough does not equal whole grain, and it does not mean that it's going to have a decent amount of fiber in it. So sourdough, that term tells you that the bread has been fermented, but that does not automatically mean high in fiber. And often your much cheaper loaf of your normal whole grain bread can have more fiber than your sourdough. And that fiber is what really helps slow the digestion and support steadier blood sugar levels. Now you can get a sourdough made with a wholemeal flour, and that will give you both the fermentation and the whole grain component. But it's just something I want to flag because I don't think many people are aware of this. A practical target when it comes to bread is looking for one that has at least 2 grams of fiber per slice. Some will even have more than this. Or if the package only tells you per 100 grams, you want 6 grams of fiber per those 100 grams. And just be careful, just because your bread looks brown, it does not mean it's whole wheat or whole grain. Many food manufacturers will dye the bread. But look at the ingredient list, and the first ingredient should be something like whole wheat, whole grain, or wholemeal. And of course, bread isn't your only option. Oats and barley are excellent in particular because they contain a special type of fiber called a beta-glucan. And this is particularly helpful for cholesterol and blood sugar control. And when it comes to the amount, when you're thinking about your plate, roughly 1/4 of that should be carbohydrates. So they're not the base of the entire meal, but they're still a component of it. You want to be pairing those whole grains with around 1/4 plate of protein, and the rest of your plate should be non-starchy carbohydrates or salad. You're always bulking meals out with fruit, vegetables, and salad. I really don't recommend trying keto. If it works for you and it works for you, that's fine. But I just find in practice it often backfires and people end up in a worse position than when they started. Now the next food is one of the most convenient foods that you can keep in your fridge, and that is Greek yogurt or skyr. I go through buckets of this stuff every single month, and it's in 95% of all my weight loss clients' meal plans. And the reason I include it is because it's very versatile, more versatile than you believe, which I'll give you some pointers on, but it is also one of the easiest ways to add a decent, meaningful amount of protein to any meal or snack. And protein is particularly useful during weight loss because it helps with fullness. It's much more filling than fat and carbohydrates, and it helps protect your muscle while you lose fat. And depending on the brand, 100 grams of Greek yogurt can give you up to 10 grams of protein for only 60 calories. That is an incredible return on your calories. You can choose 0%, low fat, or full fat depending on your goals and preferences. But I always recommend checking the label and not opting for the Greek style yogurts, as they have other things added in to make it thick. It's not actually a Greek yogurt. So the Greek yogurt and the skyr or skyr, I'm not sure the correct way to pronounce it, are very good options. But what I wanted to mention is that plain Greek yogurt is so much more versatile than people realize. And this is one of the reasons I typically will buy plain rather than flavored, because I can get really creative with how I use it. So the typical way people think is to have it with like berries or granola or with something sweet maybe. But you can actually use Greek yogurt in many savory dishes and in baking too. It can make very fluffy, moist muffins, and it's excellent for making like a dip if you wanted to have it with tacos, or if you wanted to mix it with a little bit of pesto. It makes a really nice salad, creamy salad dressing. So there's multiple ways to use it. If you're not already, I would recommend following me over on Instagram, because I share lots of healthy recipes and also tips about how to make healthy eating that little bit easier over on there. And I also have a completely free email newsletter where I share many more tips and recipes as well. I'll leave the link to join that down below. But yeah, Greek yogurt is an excellent one. If you're lactose intolerant, there are yogurts on the market that have the lactose removed, or the closest alternative would be something like a soy yogurt as well. That would have a similar enough amount of protein. Now next is not one food, but a family of foods, and that is legumes. So your beans, peas, lentils. These foods have something that is surprisingly difficult to find, and that is that they contain both protein and fiber. Because typically a high protein food like a chicken breast or a Greek yogurt, it will be low in fiber. And typically a high fiber food like a whole grain won't have meaningful amounts of protein. But legumes tend to have a nice amount of both. And this combination is extremely helpful when it comes to managing your weight. Again, they're also inexpensive, versatile, and you can have them canned or frozen. Something I always have is a bag of frozen peas and a bag of frozen edamame in my freezer. I can add the peas into stir fries, into soups, into pasta, into fried rice, and same with the edamame. And actually, if you're not a fan of eggs or avocado, for breakfast, you can actually have a really nice meal with smashed edamame with a little bit of salt and pepper, a little bit of lemon juice, and serve that on your whole grain bread. And then lentils are fantastic as well. Whenever I'm making a meat-based dish, I'll typically sub half of the meat for the lentils. You won't even notice the difference. And again, it means you don't have to necessarily go meat-free, but you're just cutting back and you're adding in a little bit more to make up that bulk in the meal. So lentils are great in things like a spaghetti or a chili or a stew. And then your canned beans, like your black beans and your chickpeas, these are Again, so versatile to pop into many different dishes. So if you're not doing this now, this is definitely one to start playing around with. And again, check out my Instagram or my website for recipe ideas. Next, we have another food group, which is non-starchy veg. Things like your kale, your spinach, your bok choy, your broccoli, your cauliflower. And there's a very specific benefit to these for weight loss that goes beyond just your vegetables are good for you. So your stomach, it has stretch receptors. So it responds partly to the physical volume of a meal. And as you eat and your stomach expands, especially if you're eating a big, large, crunchy salad, these stretch receptors help send signals to your brain that food has arrived and you're becoming full. And this is why the size and volume of a meal matter. Vegetables contain a lot of water and fiber for relatively few calories, which means they can make what's on your plate physically larger without making the energy or the calorie content of that meal much more significant. So if you were to compare a small bowl of creamy pasta with the exact same bowl of the same amount of a creamy pasta, but you've added in some mushrooms, some spinach and some broccoli, you haven't changed the calorie content of that meal very much. But that second meal is going to take up way more volume in your stomach. It will require a lot more chewing and will probably feel a lot more satisfying. So this does not mean that you need to live on plain, boring steamed vegetables, but do make use out of this principle. I typically, at the start of every week, will roast 2 big trays of my favorite vegetables. Get them nice and crispy. And then I can add them to all meals that they work in throughout the week, essentially bulking out those meals, helping me feel more satisfied. So this is not a principle to sleep on. And make use of frozen vegetables too. They can be really convenient, particularly when you're not organized maybe with your weekly grocery shops, or when things are kind of in and out of season, or you find that when you buy vegetables, they end up wilting and going off in the fridge. Then really make use of the frozen ones. Next, we have one of my favorite foods for helping to calm inflammation in the body, and that is fatty, oily fish. Like your salmon, your sardines, your mackerel, and your trout. These fish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which help control the body's inflammatory response. They do not magically burn visceral fat like any of these foods, but they support a healthier environment inside the body, which is important because visceral fat itself can drive inflammation. And beyond thinking about the visceral fat, this is also important for your general health, for your heart health and your brain health in particular. A good target is to have 2 servings of fish every week, one of which should be oily. And fresh fish, I know, can be quite expensive, so make use of your canned too, and your frozen. You could cook that frozen salmon in the air fryer and get it nice and crispy, or you could make fish cakes using canned salmon. And I also love tinned sardines lately. They're a food that many people don't gravitate towards, but they're one of the most nutritious foods you can get. And again, so much more affordable than the fresh fish. And if you don't eat any fish for whatever reason, you don't like it, or for ethical reasons, I then would consider an omega-3 supplement. Ideally one with EPA and DHA, and if you're vegan, you can get an algae-sourced supplement. And then the final food is almost entirely fat, and that is olive oil. But again, before you start pouring half a bottle over your salad, calories do matter here, and 1 tablespoon has roughly 120 calories. So the benefit isn't in adding unlimited amounts of olive oil, but it is in using it to replace some of the saturated fats, like cream, butter, or coconut oil that you might have been using. So all olive oil is rich in unsaturated fats, but the extra virgin is particularly rich in polyphenols. And this is a key part of the Mediterranean diet, which is one of the healthiest and most researched ways of eating. Personally, what I do when it comes to olive oil is I buy 2. I buy one which is called just your regular olive oil. Sometimes it's called a light olive oil, not to be mistaken with light as in lower in calories. It's not. But it's the one that I kind of use for just my general cooking, where I'm not, basically I want to save my really nice extra virgin one, which is more expensive, for like my dresses and for dipping or for serving with some other foods where I can really reap the benefits of that. But again, if weight loss is your goal, you do need to be mindful of the amount that you use. There can be quite a fine line between a drizzle of olive oil and accidentally adding 300 calories. So there we have it. Those are the 7 foods that I would prioritize if I was trying to lose visceral fat. Nuts, whole grains, Greek yogurt or your skyr, beans and lentils, colourful vegetables, fatty fish, and olive oil. You don't need to eat all 7 every single day, but I do think it's good to start including more of these foods throughout the week. And if you do need help with getting these foods in and some recipe ideas, sign up for my email newsletter and pop me a follow on Instagram. Any questions, I'm always happy to help. Please just comment below, or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover next. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Stay happy and stay healthy, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.